Coach K is, and this ideology of a next play has had a huge impact on me. And I remember vividly reading it in his first book, Leading with the Heart. And I understood it and I could conceptualize it, but I didn't have the emotional maturity to start applying it to my life just yet. It wasn't until 15 years later when I was working at DeMatha for Mike Jones that I actually saw that concept put into practice. And Coach Jones would use that as part of the terminology with everything we did at DeMatha. He would do it during workouts, during practices, during film sessions, during games. He would always make this hand gesture as if he was flipping a page, and he would just say, next play, next play. So it wasn't until I got to see it put into practice that I started to adopt it. And then once I started to adopt it in my own life, I mean, it's one of the biggest life-changing mantras that I've ever had. I mean, and it's like I can look at my life as pre-next play and post-next play, and it's almost like I'm a different person.
Welcome to another Coaching You podcast with the coach Brendan Suhr, presented by Noah Basketball. Today, Coaching You faculty member from the very beginning, Alan Stein Jr., who is a player development coach, Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, Markelle Fultz, DeMatha Catholic back in the day, is going into the world of corporate and keynote speaking all over. And he's one of the biggest people in demand. His messages are incredible. Came out with a brand new book that I love it. It's called Next Play. It is absolutely a must get for yourself, your team, your organization, if you're in business. And I'm telling you, Alan is absolutely one of the best communicators there is on this planet. I think you're really going to enjoy it. All the ways to get the book, they'll all be in our show notes. So make sure that you go there to order both, either the book or the audio book, and some bonuses that Alan has. So make sure you get that. After a quick message from our sponsors, we're going to come back with Alan Stein Jr., which will, whatever kind of day you're having, will totally change the day as we talk about Next Play. Noah Basketball is our new presenting sponsor of our Coaching You podcast. Noah Basketball is a shot tracking and data company that has helped change how coaches and players perfect the game's most important skill, shooting. Noah is a data service provider that uses machine learning and the latest computer vision technology to provide real-time data and feedback to improve shooting accuracy and consistency for professional and amateur basketball players. Noah has now analyzed over 570 million shots from countless high school, hundreds of college teams, and 28 NBA franchises. The technology is simply amazing. Once the system has been installed, players will be able to get immediate feedback on their shooting arc, left and right positioning, depth, makes or misses, and makes the data available to players and coaches on your mobile device. For more information about how Noah can help your team, visit noahbasketball.com. So excited to have my friend Alan Stein with me. Alan was one of our original Coaching You faculty members when Kevin Eastman and I started Coaching You 18 years ago. It's amazing how time flies, Alan. And at the time, we brought Alan in to speak at a couple of our events because he was a tremendous player development coach and worked with incredible talent, like maybe the best offensive player outside of Jordan ever in the NBA, and Kevin Durant. When he was at Montrose Christian, as well as many other NBA players that came out of there, but also when he went to DeMatha, with our very, very close friend Mike Jones. He got to work with guys that were tremendous college players and also some neat NBA players that were there. But Alan, welcome, my friend. It's so great to see you again.
Oh, it's so awesome to be with you, Coach. I can't believe it's been 18 years since you guys started Coaching You. And this is very meaningful for me. I mean, you and Coach Eastman and Coach Ravling and a whole host of folks are just on the Mount Rushmore of people that have had a massive impact and influence on my life. So for us to have some of these full circle moments is always very special for me.
And I can remember, you and I off our, when we were not actually, doing different things where, you'd come down to Disney and I'd get to see your twins, your twin boys, and even Layla when she was born. I mean, it's so cool to now watch kids grow up and stuff, in front of you. And, but, let's talk first about, when you were, I look at you, even though in what you're doing now, we'll talk about later, the success you're having as a speaker worldwide. But, you're a coach, and now you're coaching a different kind of, instead of a player, you're coaching people. But everything about you is the same as I try to do. I've never coached basketball. I coach people. And that is totally what has come through in your newest book, which we'll get to, about your influence on people and how people influence you. But talk about going back to working with Durant and the other terrific players. How did that influence you on what you're doing now?
Well, I don't coach basketball. I coach people. You said that to me one of the first times we met, so probably 18 years-ish ago. And that had such a profound impact on me, just that concept. And that is really how I most identify. I mean, we all have a variety of different titles, a keynote speaker and author and but I'm a coach to my core. And I've always believed, it's a coach's job to get someone to a level of performance that they either don't think they can get to on their own or maybe can't get to on their own. So we're really in the business of lighting other people's candles and empowering them. And it really doesn't matter what format that is or what industry that is. Basketball happens to be obviously a major passion of ours, which is why we use that as the vehicle to do it. But yeah, like even having an opportunity to work with someone like Kevin Durant when he was really young, of course, I was attracted to his basketball ability and his talent and his ceiling as a player. But for me, it was way more meaningful to help him grow and mature as a human being and as a person, and to teach those intangibles of work ethic and respect and accountability. I mean, the basketball stuff was fun. That was our playground, but it was the character that was always most important to me. And that's still what I hold most sacred, even as a father. Like, that's what I'm hoping to impart on my own children.
When Kevin Eastman and I would work together, and Rav, and God bless, we miss him already. And, coaching is about taking people where they can't take themselves. And our mutual friend, Jordan Montgomery, he coined a term a couple of years ago when you and I were together with him in Las Vegas. He coined a term to me. He said, I'm not a speaker, I'm a performance coach. And that's really what we are nowadays when we work. We help players, business people, teams, coaches perform better. And that's really what the whole purpose of life is how do I perform better as a parent, and just as a human being in this world. So when you got to the idea, and every one of your books, I just love them, the way they're, the way you do them, because they're really sports titled almost. But the Next Play one hit me, your newest book, Next Play, hit me because Coach K and I have been dear friends for, almost 50 years. And we were on with the Dream Team together, he as Chuck's assistant, I as the lead scout. But the thing about Mike that I've always impressed is that he's very simple. For a brilliant guy that went to West Point, smarter than both of us combined times 10, he makes everything what people in the world would say is so complex. He has this ability to simplify everything. And that's what I thought you really did in Next Play. But explain, first of all, what Next Play is to you, and then why you did the book.
Well, I certainly appreciate that compliment. I mean, to me, some of the most valuable people, especially coaches in the world, are those that can take the complex and simplify them. Because I've always been a believer that complexity undermines execution. So for all of us, whether we're wearing our parenting hat or our coaching hat, it should be our job to break things down to the basics and the fundamentals and work towards mastery of those. And yes, Coach K is, and this ideology of a next play has had a huge impact on me. And I remember vividly reading it in his first book, Leading with the Heart. And this would have been probably 2001. And I read it and I understood it and I could conceptualize it, but I didn't have the emotional maturity to start applying it to my life just yet. I still would find myself allowing myself to be emotionally hijacked, to get upset over something that was pretty trivial, to stay dwelling on something that was in the past. And I had a lot of difficulty moving on to the next play. It wasn't until 15 years later when I was working at DeMatha for Mike Jones that I actually saw that concept put into practice. And Coach Jones would use that as part of the terminology with everything we did at DeMatha. He would do it during workouts, during practices, during film sessions, during games. He would always make this hand gesture as if he was flipping a page, and he would just say, next play, next play. And what was equally as important was he always modeled that. You know, one of my favorite parts about Coach Jones is, of all the high-level coaches I've ever been around, he spent less time yelling at officials than almost anyone I've ever met, because he would remind himself, like, yeah, I didn't like that call. Oh, well, next play. And so it wasn't until I got to see it put into practice that I started to adopt it. And then once I started to adopt it in my own life, I mean, it's one of the biggest, like, life-changing mantras that I've ever had. I mean, and it's like, I can look at my life as pre-next play and post-next play, and it's almost like I'm a different person. So that was the reason for wanting to share that message with others, because it's been so helpful to me.
You know, you and I talked about this offline, is that I think a lot of people that I love and respect and coach, and even, they act like they've always been perfect, and they write books, and it's like their whole life shit never happened to them. Okay. And I've always said that every championship team I've ever been part of, there has been major crises in the middle of a season. Yeah. And Chuck Daly used to use the great term that on every, like, we were like plane pilots of a plane, and that there's going to always be turbulence, but our job is to land the plane safely. And I thought in this book, knowing you so well and knowing who you are as a human being, which I love, how vulnerable you were, and that you didn't portray yourself as, I've always been this incredible international speaker, but shit happened to me early on that I've learned from, and I'm on a journey now, a continual journey that hopefully never ends, that we never, you know, that we're never going to get complacent and be happy where we are. We're just going to keep getting better. Is that one of the things that you tried to, you know, bring out in the book?
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, I've lived a really good 50 years so far. I mean, I'm very grateful for the 50 years I've lived, but I have made more than my fair share of boneheaded mistakes.
Turnovers.
Yeah, turnovers. Oh, yeah. Probably led the league in turnovers. And they've affected relationships. They've affected my business. They've affected a lot of areas. But I'm finally at a level where I'm at peace with the mistakes that I've made. I've forgiven the younger version of myself for making those mistakes. I'm really trying hard to not repeat those same mistakes in the next 50 years of life, because I have the optimism and the delusion to think I'm going to live another 50 years. I'm only at halftime right now. And as you know, the best coaches in the world make incredible adjustments during halftime. And most of the best teams in the world play a better second half than they played in the first half, because they were able to make those adjustments. They went in with a very sound game plan. A few things went off the rails and happened differently than they had thought, and then they make adjustments during halftime, and they come out like gangbusters in the second half. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I could only do that if I was honest and vulnerable with myself over the missteps that I've made in the first half. And then, like I said, I'm at peace with those now. Many of them I can add levity to and look back and go, boy, was the 20-year-old Alan a knucklehead for doing that? But that's just where I was at that time in my life. And now, to me, what's most important is that the 50-year-old Alan doesn't keep making the same 20-year-old Alan mistakes. And that's what Next Play is all about.
You know, I loved it. Right from the introduction of the book, you talked about success made simple. And immediately, for someone who's very basic like myself, that was very attractive, because I think I read things nowadays and say, how's that going to help me? You know, but when you simplify things, I think it gives people confidence that they might be able to attain that. So
Yeah.
share with us what you mean by success made simple.
Well, you and I got together this past summer at the Jay
Right.
Billis camp, which is always a wonderful time
Unbelievable.
to kind of collaborate. And one of the things we talked about there was even the game of basketball is incredibly simple in premise. I mean, the entire premise is we want our team to score more points than the other team when the final buzzer goes off. So that's like the apex of what we're trying to achieve. So then we work one level down and go, okay, well, if we always take the highest percentage shot on offense and we force our opponent to take the lowest percentage shot when we're on defense, well, those two things will greatly increase the chance that we'll have the most points on the scoreboard. All right, well, let's break it down even further. Well, what's the nuance that goes into us taking the highest percentage shot possible? And then you break that down. And what goes into us making our opponent take the lowest percentage? And then we break that down. And then each of those. So we're starting to build almost this tree, but it all starts with that very North Star of we want to score more points than our opponent. So for me, in any area of our life that we're trying to excel, whether it's coaching, it's parenting, it's running a business, you need to figure out what that North Star is and then start to break it down and simplify the layers underneath it until you get to a point where what's in front of you are things that you have control over and parts of your process that you can work towards every single day. And that's how I'd like to simplify success is take this big lofty goal, but break it down into manageable parts that you can do every single day of your life. And then it's just a matter of being consistent, being disciplined, having some patience, and stacking days.
That's a key thing, stacking days. I think consistency and stacking days are something that's lost a lot on players. I really do. You started your book where I feel at my age, I beat you by a quarter now, that I feel like I have total mastery over, I'm very self-aware of who I am. I know who I am. I know who I'm not. Okay. Mm-hmm. Very comfortable in that.
Yes.
Okay. I've worked with the greatest, and I know I'm not. But I know who I am. You start out your book with self-awareness, and I know why, but tell us why.
Well, it needs to be the starting point because, again, if we're going to simplify it, and I'll use somewhat of probably a cliched analogy at this point, but like many cliches, the reason they're around is because they're true. You know, in today's day and age of high tech, most people are familiar with using GPS of some sort, especially for those that are directionally illiterate like I am. And when you have a GPS, there's only two pieces of information that the GPS needs. It needs to know where you are right now in this moment, and it needs to know where you're trying to go. Those are the only two things that GPS needs to know. GPS doesn't care where you were 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, or 5 weeks ago, because that information is now irrelevant. And it doesn't care about where you're trying to go 5, weeks from now. It needs to know where you're trying to go now and where you are right now. And those two pieces of information, I think, are really important for all of us to know. We need to know who we are and, in air quotes, where we are in this moment. And that is self-awareness. And then we also have to have the vision to know where it is that we're trying to go, because that's the only way you can kind of put the direct link between the two. So for me, the foundation of everything is having the awareness to know who we are and where we are. And that is, as you know, because you're incredibly self-aware, that means having the courage to look at some of the uncomfortable stuff. It means having the courage to look at ourselves with an honest lens and say, like, these are my areas where I can grow. These are some of my current weaknesses. These are some of my fears. These are my insecurities. These are the mistakes that I've made before. And we have to be just as comfortable taking a look at that stuff as we do taking a look at the good stuff, the hopes, the dreams, the strengths, the accolades, because we have plenty of that stuff as well. But we're a two-sided coin as human beings. We're both the good, the bad, and the ugly, as they say. And the more we can be aware of and comfortable with all of it, it's the first step to us being able to improve and get where we're trying to go.
So we discussed it briefly earlier of the journey that you're on and everyone is on. But I thought the way you worded it to start the first chapter was something that I said, that is so good. That is so clever of saying always becoming. And I think that is so appropriate for today's young people, is that they want They want to microwave their future. They want instant gratification and all that. And that's cool. I don't begrudge them that. But we know, we can't skip steps in life, et cetera, to be really the best.
Yeah.
But talk about why you talked about always becoming as far as starting this journey.
Well, for me, that actually is a very empowering and liberating mindset. Now, one of the mistakes that I've made in the past, there have been a couple times in my life where I thought I had arrived. And that's what I'm trying to avoid moving forward, is I don't ever want to feel that I've arrived and I've hit the destination. Now, there are going to be some nice, along the journey, there are going to be some nice destinations that I hit, and I'm going to want to stop for a moment and smell the roses and take a breath and be grateful. But I don't ever want to feel like I've hit the finish line when it comes to life, when it comes to evolving and growing. So to me, that's what gives me the most excitement, is that I'm always becoming a better version of myself. Now, like anything, it's not a direct straight line. I mean, it's not completely linear. There will absolutely be some days where I take a step backwards, where I'm not my best self, where I make some poor decisions. But that's also part of the process of becoming, because then I use those missteps and those mistakes as something to educate me, to be more informed, to make better decisions moving forward. So that's how I try to stack the deck, is I'm always becoming, because I'm always evolving into a better version of myself.
We love Coach Rav, George Raveling.
Absolutely.
And, many times that he's spoken to us, one of the things he always bragged about really was about what Nike's philosophy was when they would, pat each other in the boardroom about what this incredible new product was and how it's going to change the world. And the scientists, the engineers would just, take a victory lap, in essence, mentally around the room. And Phil Knight would just walk in and say, there is no finish line.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, so no matter how good we do, we're not done.
Right.
He'd say, what's next?
Exactly. And that's kind of a concept of next play. And
exactly.
And no one, I don't know that anyone on the planet modeled the philosophy of always becoming better than Coach Rav. I mean, you're talking about someone that well into his late 80s was still a voracious reader, would still, there have been times where, I would be speaking at Coaching You and I would see Coach Rav taking notes on something that I was saying, like that blew my mind. Not because what I had to say was super important, but the humility it took for someone that was many decades life experience ahead of me to still have the humility to say, hey, there might be something this kid says that could add value to my life. He was a real student of the game. He was a student of life. And that's really what always becoming is about. And with this concept of next play, I do always want to make sure that I put a little asterisk next to it and remind folks that it is okay to take a few moments to celebrate the good times. It's okay to take a few moments to enjoy a job well done, or to congratulate a teammate or a partner. So it's not always about, hey, Brendan, you're awesome. I don't care. Next play. It's, hey, Brendan, you are remarkable. Let's enjoy this moment. Have a good cocktail and a good dinner tonight. But we know that we're not done just because you did a great job today. Let's enjoy it. But then let's move to the next play. So I always want to make sure there's a balance there, because I don't want folks to just go through life with blinders on and not actually enjoy the ride.
So I use next play when I work with teams, coaches, and players. And the way I do it there, mainly college players, is that when they do make a mistake, they have a tendency, because of ego, because of parental always berating them when they did make mistakes, missed shots, etc., that they would hang their heads, etc. And I know that was Coach K's original intent, is to move on to the next play.
Absolutely.
And so I use it there often. But I think what you've done is you expounded it so much more for life to move to the next play. And I love that. Emotions play a big part in next play, good and bad, right?
Absolutely.
Explain.
Well, if I had to break it down, of what I want to impart on my own children, if I had to pick one singular thing that I would want to impart on my own children, it would be to become good decision makers. Like if I could just bestow one skill on them, it would be to become good decision makers. But kind of a 1B or a part of that is I want them to have the ability to regulate their own emotions, because I think that's actually what will enhance your ability to make good decisions, is when you can regulate your own emotions. Because as we all know, at some point in our lives, we've allowed ourselves to get emotionally hijacked, and we've made decisions out of anger. We've made decisions out of fear. We've made decisions out of impatience. As you just mentioned, we've made decisions out of ego. And I think if we're all being honest, most of the time that those were the driving forces behind our decisions, they probably weren't the best decision that we could make. So the ability to regulate our emotions and say, yes, I am really upset right now. I am really angry, and that's okay. And that's important information for me to know. And I'm going to dig a little deeper to really find the root cause of my anger or my frustration. But I'm not going to allow my anger and frustration to dictate how I show up, or dictate how I behave, or dictate how I treat others. So to me, those things are inextricably linked, and it all starts with the ability to recognize those emotions. And a lot of the times it has to do with simply the language that we choose to use. So I no longer say things like, I am angry, because that would mean that me as an entire human being is angry. Now, for me, the language I use is, I'm feeling angry, because it's only a feeling. And research has shown, and I found this remarkable when I was researching for the book, the average visceral emotion only lasts 90 seconds unless we continue to feed it or fuel it. Which means if you say something that really upsets me and I'm angry right now, I'm probably not going to be that angry in 2 minutes from now unless I keep feeding it, unless I keep using that as fuel. So emotions are going to ebb and flow with all of us. All of us have been incredibly elated one moment and then really disappointed or frustrated a moment, after. I mean, especially in sport. The game's tied, there's 2 seconds left, and right now we have optimism and excitement. The other team knocks in a half-court buzzer beater, and we go from excitement and optimism to dejection and dismay, just like that. So as human beings, we're always on this roller coaster, and we have to be able to manage both.
Yeah, our buddy John Gordon really has emphasized in the last couple of years self-talk. And as a quick side story, when I left the Knicks 15 years ago or so, living in Florida, and I'm walking through our subdivision every day for an hour, preparing talks, talking on the cell phone for maybe another opportunity. And as I'm walking through the neighborhood, one of our neighbors calls my wife one day, and she says, "Is your husband okay?" She says, "Let's not get carried away. He's all right, And she said, "Well, I see him walking every day. That's good." But he said, "But I have to tell you, he talks to himself." And she comes over, and I come home, and she says, "Are you talking to yourself when I walk?" I said, "No, I'm practicing my talks, my speeches." She laughed like hell, and she just said, "Well, one of our neighbors thinks you're going crazy now, and because of that." But self-talk that you're talking about is a really important one, and talk about that. I think it's really a great tip to give an athlete, a coach, or just performer in general.
Well, I mean, our self-talk is really the root of our self-belief. It's the root of our confidence. And what we need to learn to do, and this is something I've really had to practice, is I'm getting better now. I'm not a master at it, but I'm getting better at talking to myself the same way that I would talk to a loved one or a friend, the same way I would talk to someone that I was training and trying to get to a higher level. Because what most people do is they're incredibly judgmental and critical of themselves. And the stuff we say to ourselves, we would never say to another human being. You and I have been friends for 15 years. If you were going through a tough time in your life right now, the last thing I would do would be to be critical of you, to stack on judgment, to basically make you feel worse. Instead, I would lean in with empathy and compassion. I would be there to listen. I would be there and say, Brendan, I've got your back. I believe in you. I know you're going through a hard time, but I also know you're strong enough to get through this. And please know that if you need anything from me, I've got your back. That's how I would treat you. And yet when I'm going through a hard time, I would simply pile up the criticism and the judgment, and I'd make myself feel worse. So we often have that backwards. And, I've always believed that the things we say silently to ourselves are the most important things we will ever say. Like, that's how much it's rooted into who we are and how we show up. So I'm trying to get better at talking to myself in a compassionate way. Now, with that said, I don't want that to be misconstrued. I still hold myself to an incredibly high standard. And this is not about me saying or doing something, boneheaded and then just saying, oh, don't worry about it, Alan, you're off the hook. It's okay. You're a good guy. No, I still hold myself to the fire of being the best man that I'm capable of, but I've learned to talk to myself with compassion. And that is really how we can build confidence.
I think it's great. I think it's really one of those things that's really undertaught.
Yeah.
Right, to athletes, to people, just in general. And I think it's so important. The other thing that I think never taught to me as a kid, only learned it, in midlife, was I think I was unconsciously competent, is mindset.
Yeah.
Talk about the way you view mindset.
Well, the most important part about mindset is for folks to understand that it's malleable. It's something that can change if you train.
For those of us that didn't have that Elon education, what does malleable? What does that malleable mean?
Yeah.
What does that word mean?
It means it's not preset. It's not.
Oh, sure. Why didn't you just say that then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every single person now, just like there's other areas of our life that, we can become more educated if we study certain stuff. We can become more physically fit if we do certain exercises. There are aspects of us as human beings that can absolutely be improved with proper practice, repetition, and feedback. And mindset is one of them. I believe mindset is a decision. It's a way we choose to approach the world. And for me, at the very base level of the mindset that I try to live every day is I just try to do the best I can with what I have wherever I am. Like, that's it, full stop. I do the best I can not to blame, complain, or make excuses. A big salute to Jocko Willink, but I try to hold myself, with extreme ownership. And that I recognize that most of the things that go on around me in the world are outside of my control, but I always control my response to those things. And I can say without question, for the first 45 years of my life, I spent all of my mental energy worried about the things that I didn't control. Worried about circumstances, events, what people said, what people did. And in the last couple of years of my life, I've gotten much better at not worrying about that stuff and simply focusing on my response. Even when things happen that aren't my preference, that I don't approve of, that I don't like, that part's irrelevant. My feelings on it are irrelevant. How can I respond to this situation, or how can I respond to something that you said or did in a way that moves me forward and actually improves my situation? And that's, to me, the key of having a mindset, is letting go of what you don't control and being very thoughtful, very intentional, and very purposeful with your response. So that, and that one, it takes daily practice for sure.
Let me ask you, they talk a lot about an abundance or a scarcity mentality. Would simplify that, as you have the brilliance of doing, of sharing. How would you explain those to folks?
A scarcity mindset, which is certainly something I grew up with. And I don't say that in judgment of my parents. I love my parents very much, and they did the best they could raising me with the tools they had, and there was no shortage of love. But I grew up with a scarcity mindset. And a scarcity mindset is this feeling that there's never enough. And an abundance mindset is a feeling that there is more than enough. And you can apply this to money. You can apply this to love. You can apply this to any area of your life.
Check for me.
Yes. But really an abundance mindset would be, and here's where I sometimes find myself still getting triggered, as a professional keynote speaker, and you can probably appreciate this. For every time someone says, yes, we'll hire you, I get 3 or 4 no thank yous, we're going to go in another direction. And it's really no different than baseball. Baseball, you hit the ball 3 times out of 10 and you're in the Hall of Fame. But that means 7 times you're going to get out. Well, it's about the same batting average for me when it comes to speaking. But where I find myself sometimes triggered is when I don't get a speaking engagement, I start to feel constricted. I start to worry. I start to have anxiety. I start to think, oh gosh, am I not going to be able to make the living that I need to make to provide for my children? And instead of just saying, oh yeah, I didn't get that speaking engagement, there's 10 more that I can get, no problem at all. That would be an abundance mindset. And I'm getting better at reframing that. But I do find that sometimes I'm triggered into some of these old mindsets and old constructs. But in every area of my life, I want to believe that there is more than enough. There is more than enough people that will hire me to speak. There's more than enough love out there for me to attract a wonderful partner. There's more than enough money out there that I can get my share of it in order to provide for my family and live a wonderful life. So I'm trying to go through everything now with this abundance mentality.
Yeah, that's really good. But I think that what comes of it from most of us is the competitive instinct inside of us. That you really are pissed off that the company didn't hire you because they know they're missing out on learning and getting better, which is fine. And I think that and it's accurate. John, our friend John Gordon, talks about his walk of gratitudes every day. And I think, and I know you believe in it too, Alan, being able to show gratitude to people, but having that, I think gratitude is really one of the things in life that younger people don't get yet.
Yeah.
They're like, I used to, Chuck Daly taught me this. My wife doesn't listen to my podcast, so I can say it. He said, no matter what you ever do for your wife, no matter what gift you give her, the next day you're back to zero. It is so damn true. Okay. And I think our kids and different people in our lives, business partners, not partners, but business customers,
Yeah.
sometimes I have gratitude to them, but sometimes if something came late, all of a sudden they're pissed off.
Right.
But talk about gratitude as far as performing in one's life.
Well, where I have some empathy and some compassion is if I'm truthful with myself, I lacked gratitude when I was younger. I took so many things for granted, and there were certainly some areas in my life where I probably had a sense of entitlement and just thought, yeah, all of this stuff is owed to me. And the older I get and the more experienced I get just in life and being around amazing people like you, is I realize that's the wrong attitude to have, that I'm so grateful for so many things in my life, and I do the best I can not to take them for granted. Our mutual friend Jay Billis often references his favorite quote from the late Skip Prosser, which is never delay gratitude. And I really love that. And kind of an offset of that is another mantra that I try to live by. And that is a compliment unshared is an act of selfishness. So if you have something nice to say to someone and you choose not to say it, you're being selfish. Like you have an opportunity to light someone else's candle by giving them some praise or telling them something nice, and you're choosing not to. So I try to be unbelievably forthcoming and liberal with dishing out as many compliments and thank yous and I appreciate yous as I can. And the cool thing is the universe just kind of rewards that. I'm so grateful every time someone reaches out to me to say, hey, coach, I saw you at a Nike clinic. Thank you so much for what you shared. Or, hey, Alan, I read your book. It was super helpful. I'm going to give it to my son. Thank you. So many people are kind enough to thank me for things that I've done for them. I want to pay that forward 10x. And for every compliment I get, I want to give out 10.
That's great. You and I are totally aligned on vision and following your North Star. And I think the way you explained it was, this is something that Zach and I are going to talk about because I think that is the whole key to this stuff. Explain, please.
Well, I think society, and this has only been, exponentially heightened via social media. I think lots of times society tries to tell us what our North Star should be. And in many cases, it's the external trappings that we're all aware of. It's the title on your desk. It's the house you have, the car you drive, the money you make, the spouse or partner you have, whether or not your kids can go to an elite level school. And it's not to say that those things aren't important. And it's not to say that we can't or shouldn't value those things. But I just think what's most important is that each of us defines our own North Star for ourselves, and we don't allow others to do it for us. And if we can design that North Star, and then we can design the process or system an environment that will give us the best chance to achieve it, then that means we're the ones that have the power. So I'll tell you, for me, my number one North Star is my quality of life. And I define quality of life by 4 major pillars. The first is my relationships. my relationships with my children, my relationships with mentors and friends like you, my relationships with all of the people that are important in my life. But I try to devote as much time and energy to building relationships as I can. A second one is my craft. I love being a speaker. I love being a coach. And I'm always want to be in Coach Suhr and Coach Raveling mode and always be a student and doing everything I can to level up my ability as a communicator, as a coach, and so forth. So my craft is really important to me, and I put a lot of time and effort into it. The third is my wellness, and that's my physical wellness, my mental wellness, my emotional wellness. So I do everything I can to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit, and I put a lot of time and energy into that. And then the fourth pillar for me are life experiences. There are things like taking a week off of my calendar to go down and spend with Jay Billis and Brendan Suhr. It's taking time to go play at the Coach K fantasy camp and play basketball. It's going to hike a mountain or taking my kids on spring break, but life experiences. And for me, those are the four most important things in my life. And I've found that when I'm devoting most of my time, energy, money, and resources into those four things, I have an incredibly high quality of life, and life is amazing. So that's really how I define success. So if you were to ask me if I think I'm successful, I would say if I'm spending my time and energy on those four things, I am absolutely successful. And I didn't mention anything about number of speaking engagements, bank accounts, none of that. That stuff is part of the process, but it's not everything. So for me, those are that's the four pillars that I use to live what I would consider my best life.
Repeat those again, because I think it's so important. Just the names of the four.
Yeah, the relationships, my craft, my health, my wellness, and then my life experiences. Those are my four.
Yeah, I think that is that's so important for you, and I think you do live that. But I think one of the things that you and I have seen. First of all, what I love about it, Alan, is there's two types of coaches. There's transformational coaches, which try to help transform the players and the people they work with's lives. And there's transactional coaches, which you and I have been around a shitload of times. And there's so many people in business, frankly, right now, the way the country is, so many people are just into transaction in business. And if you're just as a transactional business leader, your company's probably not going to do that well, in my opinion, because you're not taking care of the most important thing, your people.
Agreed.
Right? And so culture becomes a huge word in sports, in business, but we both know that culture is really an outcome of the people's behavior, but it's based on values. And so when you go into work with companies and they say, hey, Alan, we have 12 great values, core values. And I know, relate your story to that. I thought, I just laughed my ass off when I read that.
One thing that I do want to say where I consider myself incredibly fortunate is even at a young age, I was very fortunate to be around transformational coaches. Like when I was starting my coaching journey, I mean, I'm around you and Coach Eastman and Coach Tates Locke and George Raveling and Mike Jones and transformational people. So it was really the only way that I knew how to be. Had my fate been reversed, had everyone I'd been around had been transactional, then I don't know that I'd be doing what I'm doing today or doing it in the way that I'm doing it today. So some of it is just simply the good fortune that the people that poured into me when I was younger are the exact type of people that I've tried to emulate and then pay back or pay forward. So some of it I'm just very grateful for.
I do think as leaders, you model who you were coached by. Yes. You model your parents, and I think that's why a lot of guys screw up, because if their parents weren't they just I always say are all of your kids, you have 3 children and I know them, they're all the same, even the twins? No, they're not. They're not. All 3 are different. But if you came from a large family growing up 30, 40 years ago, my wife is one of 6 parents. They raised all 6 of them the damn same.
Yeah.
There was no individual coaching based on who they were. You didn't coach every child differently. You didn't coach every player differently, which is a mandatory thing nowadays. Everyone should not be coached the same, and I think that has to do with you trying to take a player, someone, and help them be their best version of themselves. And as a high school or college player, you want to work with them for a lifetime, not for the 4 years you have them. If you're
Absolutely.
lucky, you know.
And the goal is you treat everyone fairly, but you don't treat everyone equally. If I'm a college coach and I have a freshman who's a little homesick and needs a little bit more of my time and love, then I'm going to give them a little bit more of my time and love. And maybe I've got a senior 5th-year captain who doesn't need as much of my time, so I don't need to give it. But I'm going to treat them fairly. I'm going to treat them to the same standard. But yes, what you just said, and that's to me what the essence of coaching is to be chameleon-like enough to give each person that you work with what it is that they need, specifically to their needs. And the better you can do that, I think the more impactful you'll be.
So let's go to the core values.
Yes. Yeah. What you're referencing is I had worked with a business group, and they were telling me how proud they were that they had 12 core values. And I joked with him and said, well, I don't think you understand what the word core means. And they understood that was coming from a good place, that, again, I'm trying to whittle down and simplify. And I don't know that any of us can be really good at 12 things. At least I can. I won't speak for anyone else. And that's why I said, for me, like, my entire North Star is my quality of life. But my entire existence only comes down to those 4 pillars that I just shared with you. If it's outside of those 4 pillars, then it's less of a priority for me. And to me, that's what each of us should be figuring out, is what is this North Star that we're going to pursue? And also understand that your North Star will change. You know, when you and I met 18 years ago, if you would have asked me my North Star then, it would not have been the answer I just gave you. In fact, it would have been much more superficial and external. My goal then, I probably would have said, my North Star is to be an NBA strength coach, like, full stop. That would have been my entire existence, and I would have done anything I needed to do in order to achieve that title. Whereas now I have a much different approach. And if you have me on your podcast 20 years from now, maybe my answer will have changed. Who knows? But once you've established that North Star, then you need to figure out, well, what are the handful of core values and beliefs that will give me the best chance to live that life and pursue that North Star? And then underneath those values are, what are the daily behaviors and mindsets and habits that I need to develop to support the core values that will then support the North Star? So it's like I explained at the very beginning, breaking down that tree of basketball. If the ultimate goal is to score more points than our opponent, well, what is the thing that I can do right now in this play that gives us the best chance to do that? And that's the thing I need to focus on.
So in basketball, sports in general, business, it always comes down to fundamentals.
Yeah, always.
So you have a very strong philosophy, as I do, in fundamentals. Why don't you expound on that a little bit, Alan?
Yeah, and that's part of this, is figuring out, okay, if you want to be a good basketball player, then at some level you need to be able to shoot, pass, rebound, defend, and handle the ball. Those are the 5 primary skill sets. Now, again, a layer on top of that is you have to have the basketball IQ and acumen to know when and how to do each of those things. You have to have the physical capacity and stamina to be able to do them without getting tired. You have to have, so there's more to it than that. But at the very basic, the fundamentals of the game of basketball are those 5 things. Well, think of any area that you want to excel. Maybe it's being a parent, maybe it's being a CEO, maybe it's being a coach. Well, what are the 3, 4, 5, 6 fundamentals that will give you the best chance at being good at that specific trait? And then those are the things you need to work towards mastery of. You know, just like a player needs to go in and do ball handling drills and do shooting drills and practice being a good defender and boxing out. Well, what are the things that we need to practice, the fundamentals, to be good in that specific area of life? And then just work towards those. Make that part of your process and your system and your daily disciplines to get good at the things that lead you to getting improvement in that area that you want.
You know, you and I could probably turn this into a 5-part Netflix series. Okay,
I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do that. And I think the thing that I think with books, and I really think it's so important when you read books, it's the time you read them. And so I've accomplished a lot in life, air quotes, but I still have so much more to give. Okay. Yeah. And immediately upon reading this, where I went to is, where does the next play take me and where I'm at right now? And it really defines, I want to impact millions of people around the world. And so years ago, I just wanted to coach an NBA coaching staff. That was it. End of story. Happy. Don't need anything else. Yeah. Not enough now, because I see the world needs so much more, and there's not out there. And that's what really you're doing. So in essence, this is not a book for coaches. It's not a book for business people. It's a book for every damn person, from kids all the way up. Why did you write it? And why do you think, what do you think you got in there all the things that you wanted to, where you're at right now?
Well, the main reason I write any book is because it's something that I need to work on and improve myself. And I've known in the back of my mind that this concept of next play that I first heard about in 2001 started to really see put into action in 2016 or 2010, excuse me, and then really started to live out in my own life in like 2016 or 2017. And I saw what a profound impact it had on me. I wanted to be able to share that with others. I wanted to pay that forward. You know, one of the quotes I live by is a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And that's what I hope this book does, is it lights other candles. And I remember having a talk with a really good friend and mentor of mine before I wrote the book. And I said, hey, I've got this idea. It's a book that I want to do, but I'm having a little hesitation because next play is not a concept I came up with. Like, I've literally taken it from Coach K, someone that I've always idolized. And I said, you know, should I be writing about something that someone else came up with, or should I come up with my own IP? And he said, Alan, don't worry about who came up with it. Worry about the impact that you believe it will make. And don't try to force something just so you can say it was yours if it's a lesser of an idea. If this idea of next play has had the impact on your life that you say it has, and you believe it will impact other people, then by all means, that's what you need to write about, and just give Coach K his proper credit and give Mike Jones his proper credit. So that was the reason that I dove. I just want to simply pay it forward. And I think with next play, you know, there's a few lenses that I hope the book lets people see it through. The first is what you and I have already discussed, is in the short term and in the micro, when something doesn't happen the way we want, just wipe the slate clean and move to the next play. You know, you miss a shot, you turn the ball over, next play. But in the bigger picture, which also you and I are going through in our own lives, is the bigger macro, is the transition of, you know, these different areas of life where we transition into something else. And what is my next play going to be? Like, for me personally, right now at this time in my life, I say with a smile but a heavy heart, like, my parents are not in great shape right now, and they may not be around that much longer. And I'm going to have to re-identify as someone who no longer has his parents. But what's my next play going to be? Right now, I'm amicably divorced, but I'm single. I hope that at some point I attract my person and my partner, and I have a wonderful, intimate relationship. So what's my next play going to be? How is my life going to be different when I transition into that new phase? You know, I have 15-year-old twin sons and a 13-year-old daughter. In the blink of an eye, I'm going to be an empty nester, and they're going to be out of the house. So what's my life going to look like, and what's my next play going to be when I no longer identify as a father that has 3 kids at home? So we go through all of these different transitions. Some of them are welcomed and we love. Some of them are imposed on us and are really challenging. But either way, what is my response going to be, and how can I step into the new version of myself when I no longer have the same parameters that I've always lived by? And that's really the big picture that I hope people take away from the book.
Yeah, I think that's so well said, Alan. I think the beauty of this book that I'm excited about is literally it is coming out November 4th, right when we're releasing this.
Yes.
So I know they can get it at any Amazon store, but share with us any places that you feel that they can get it, you know, where they can purchase the book.
Well, one other note too, and part of Success Simplified is this book is very concise by intention. My previous two books, Raise Your Game and Sustain Your Game, are your traditional nonfiction, 15 chapters, 75,000 words, 8 hours to read cover to cover. This book is about a third of that size. So it's something that one could literally read cover to cover in under 3 hours. Or if you want to listen to my amazingly sexy voice and you get the audio book, the audio read is only 3 hours long. I mean, it's basically a Joe Rogan podcast for an entire book. And I did that with the intention of, I don't just want this book to be purchased. I want this book to be read. I don't want this book to be something that sits on someone's desk for years and they just say, well, I'm eventually going to get to it. I want them to say, you know what, I've got an afternoon. I'm going to crank this thing open and I'm going to get something out of it. And if someone is willing to make that investment and that commitment, yes, you can get it on Amazon. You can always just go to alansteinjr.com and I've got different links and things that if folks want to, place a bulk order and buy one for their entire team or their office. I have some different bonuses and things, but yeah, I want the book to be very easily found, easily ordered, but way more importantly, easily read.
I have 1,000 books in my library. 1,000. Wow. Okay. More business than sport by far. Yeah. And one day I was researching and I said, maybe I should write one, but I don't know what the hell I'd write it on, but maybe I should. Then the publisher said to me, do you know that all business books, there's only a chapter and a half that is read?
Oh, my goodness.
How about that? A chapter and a half. I said, oh, shit, I better not do that then. But you and John Gordon, you're going to get books read because even I can read them. Okay. And so I've read it twice already in less than 4 days. So that is a huge thing. Your audiobook, though, will be a smash because you're a great speaker, great voice.
Thank you.
And nowadays, while people are commuting and stuff, they can do it. So that is brilliant on your part to do that. So, it is so great to catch up with you, my friend. And we were with Jay Billis in the middle of June for several days. He is just one of the best people on this that God has put on this earth of helping people. And it was an honor with our friend Kevin Eastman, Bob McKillop, and so many others to go and share with aspiring coaches and stuff. So that was always good. And you came injured right from Coach K's camp. So that you got an extra bonus from us for that. Yes. But it's so good to see you, my friend. And thanks for doing this book. And sharing with the people at the podcast. I'll tell you what, they're going to love it. For my listeners around the world, this is a must for you. If you're in coaching, it's a no-brainer. You must get this because it'll help your players be better, help your people on your staff get better. So I really encourage you. It should be your team book for the season. That's what I would do if I was coaching a team right now. And if I was coaching the NBA, I'd get the audio books because those son of bitches wouldn't read it. But they will listen to stuff. But Alan, thanks, brother. I appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Coach, for your friendship, your leadership, your mentorship. And this is great. You can do it anytime you'd like.